Hey, Max. I think there's
Hey,
clicking in the
was
audio.
that?
I think there's some weird clicking in your audio. I think it's yours anyway.
Did it go away when I muted?
Yeah, but it didn't come back, so
Huh. All right. Well,
maybe it will. I don't know. Anyway, it's
hardware issues dead for now.
yeah, I don't hear it back, so all good.
I'm just glad I can hear people.
Your mic worked.
Was that?
Your audio system worked this time.
Yeah. Success rate's back up to like 60%. Not to brag.
Or jinx.
Should we get started? Do we have quorum?
Quorum or usurpation?
Looks like Andrew had the first agenda item, policy library versioning.
Sure. All right. Well, I'll go ahead and get started real quick. I tried to put all the context in the document here, but I know there's been a couple sort of offline conversations, so I know at least a couple of us are familiar with this. I think this came up, question kind of Rita asked, but I think it's a good one to kind of discuss larger. Right now, we've got the policy for what we do for gatekeeper library versioning. This is just straight off the page, so people don't have to go look for it. And I can share up my screen maybe if I realized if not, everybody may have the notes in front of them. Hopefully that's the correct one. So right now, basically, we do a major version bump whenever there's a breaking change in the policy, a minor if there's a backwards compatible one, and a patch if it's something, Rego fix or metadata, etc. I think the question came up, what happens when we change sample constraints? Because there are, for every template, at least one sample constraint right now. And should they require a policy version bump? They don't change the template itself, so it's not quite the same scope. I think there's some conversation on the GitHub issue you want to look at. My particular opinion is we shouldn't bother because the versions are really aligned in my mind with the constraint templates. Their kind, schema, rego, metadata. That's what's used by consumers. Consumers are hopefully not consuming sample constraints and just applying them. I'm sure somebody has, but I wouldn't recommend it. I will tell you, without exceptions, you'll probably clobber your privileged namespaces for whatever Kubernetes distribution you're using. So that's my thought. And I noticed there's a couple other comments, so thank you. And I was actually just reading this one, like just as I was logging on. The other kind of piece there is that right now, the logic behind it that builds the artifact hub only checks the constraint template version. So if we don't bump the number on that, I think it won't update the samples there. But at the same time, if we're bumping the version just to put a new sample up there, it looks like we updated the template and we didn't. So I think it's kind of, I think my overall summary is probably we should decide one way or the other, and then kind of make the automation align to what people would like. So that's just my notes on it. And I don't know if the other folks who are involved, I think Rita, this came from you, and then let's see, I can't remember.
That's
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, you put the comment on there. So anyway, if you guys want to talk, if you two would like to talk through it at all, that's kind of my starting pitch on it.
Right. Yeah. So let me add like a little more context on this. And I apologize, Andrew, like somehow I missed this issue or PR.
And not timely at all. So just
Right. So no worries. Okay. So there are two different things. So first of all, the check that we have in our script or in our code is to just make sure that people are bumping the versions correctly. And you are right that it's based on the constraint template version rather than anything else. And that's what we decided. So that's one thing. And then that has nothing to do with Artifact Hub. So it's just our internal and just it's just in our CI so that we fail promptly if people are not bumping. Second thing is when we want to display or when we want to update our packages in the Artifact Hub. And the way it works is we have in like Artifact Hub configuration file, we have a field called digest. So the way Artifact Hub works is if you update that digest, then the packages will get refreshed on the Artifact Hub website. What we assign to that digest is the hash of constraint template. So again, like we are just working with the constraint template here. So with the changes that you made in that PR won't be reflected on the Artifact Hub because we are not updating the digest, or we are not considering anything other than constraint template while computing that hash that we assign to the digest. So that's what I think I asked in that issue also. So like, what do we prefer? Are we okay, as Andrew, you were mentioning, that are we okay not having updated constraint on the Artifact Hub? Is that something okay? Or if not, then what are things that we should consider while I compute that digest or compute that hash for digest?
nope, that's good information. Yeah, I didn't realize that the Artifact Hub wouldn't get updated. So yeah.
Yeah, so it's pretty much just like I want to ask here, like to everybody, like what do you all think? I mean,
I
what
think that
Andrew
the
mentioned.
samples are, I think that we don't have to bump it for samples. I think that's because we're not changing the template, and samples are just samples, I think.
Correct. But then there will be a discrepancy between our website and Artifact Hub though. Because in
Just
the
for the
website,
sample.
we go ahead and update it. In website, we just like go ahead and refresh and do it again.
Can we update an Artifact Hub too, or no?
We don't.
Because they're tied to versions in Artifact Hub?
Yeah, kind of.
I see. Can we just copy in the samples to the existing version?
Sounds like we'd probably have to change the hashing scheme for Artifact Hub is my impression, which
Right.
probably would do a huge churn the first time that happens. So it's not ideal either.
Right. I think I can check that if we can do it, but I mean we'll have to check it into the master to make sure. I mean, let's see if that happens. Okay, the way Artifact Hub refers is like it has a path that is pointing to our GitHub repository, and it continuously checks to that, and it only update if the digest is updated. Then only it will pick up the changes. Otherwise, it won't.
Yes, I think the only downside to changing the digest, right, would be is basically we'd have Artifact Hub pull everything. Although I guess if they were item potent, it wouldn't matter. But anyway.
Is the digest controlled by us or Artifact Hub?
No, it's controlled by us. It's our way of telling Artifact Hub that, hey, go ahead and refresh. Samples on GK website.
And when you say digest, you mean like a value in like a specific place, or just a Git digest, like the?
No, so it's the field that is created by Artifact Hub. So like they have their own configuration, right? Like version, name, whatnot. So one of the field is digest, and that is what they use to do the refresh. Rita is asking something. Can we link samples on GK website?
Yeah, I guess I'm hearing that the samples are just reference, right? Like that's not the thing that is driving the versioning. So if that's the case, would it be possible to not sync those and just link to them that link to the ones in the Gatekeeper website? I know it's not a great experience because they're going to a different page, but then we don't have to keep them in sync.
We probably can. So the way stuff are getting displayed on the Artifact Hub is highly customized. So I worked with one of their maintainers to tell them like, hey, here is our constraint. And I mean, here is a structure where you will find constraint templates and whatnot. And I think they have wrote like a custom code in order to display that. I will check basically that in their configuration file somewhere I can link the website link so that it will automatically do. Otherwise, you'll have to work with them to sort of somehow figure it out a way to display that link or the information on Artifact Hub. Does that make sense?
So are folks okay with that? Well, assuming it's doable, I guess.
Yeah, I don't feel like this is a blocker for merging any particular PR. Like in the short term, if there's an example or two missing from Artifact Hub while we're working on this, I would rather have the thing somewhere than nowhere. And then in terms of, it sounds like what we're talking about is just changing our digest calculation method. Is that right?
That is
Sure.
one way of doing it, but I'm not sure if we should do it. Because again, like since our versioning is tied to the template, right? I'm still tying that whole thing with the same, like when we calculate the digest, I'm doing that based off of the constraint template rather than anything else.
Right, but the digest is just an indicator to refresh. It doesn't influence any kind of like versioning or anything like that on Artifact Hub, right?
Correct.
So as long as it's stable, like I'm not 100% sure like of all of the purposes of the digest, right? Like why is Artifact Hub not just like reading the latest of whatever pointer, right? Is it an efficiency thing on their end? Is it a consistency thing?
It is mostly polling based mechanism, right? And they consistently poll. I forgot the interval. I think it's an hour or so or 30 minutes or so or something like that. So they don't want to keep doing that. Like even if they poll, they want to make sure that they do further calculations if it's necessary. Let me do one more thing. Let me go back and try to see if we can still refresh digest, but keep the version same, just so that our examples and everything will get updated. I mean, at the top of my head, I'm thinking appending like a Unix timestamp or something like that every time we merge something into the master. So let me figure it out what that correlation is exactly, and I'll propose the solution. Is that okay?
You're thinking any change across the whole repo would add the Unix timestamp to the digest?
Yes. So digest works per policy or per constraint. So they will not upgrade anything and everything, right? So let's say what your PR is right now, right? When it gets merged, I can update the digest for that.
Just for that folder?
Policy. Correct.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No. That's what I was. I misunderstood. I thought something different. So, okay. Perfect.
Okay, but I think for now, it should be okay to merge the PR though. I mean,
yeah, I'm not too worried about this PR. And just for folks who haven't read it, like I'm just removing some excluded namespaces from a sample that probably shouldn't have been in there. We don't put excluded namespaces in any other examples, but those are the kind of things oftentimes I know I've done a number of PRs, which are just like typos or other things for sample constraints. They don't really make much of a huge change, or just because the names were strange or overlapping.
Yeah, these are like docs changes in my view, rather than
that's my opinion. But I was gonna say there's no hurry on my PR because, like I said, I was just noticed it and thought it was weird. But so if we want to wait and use that as a real sample when you're done doing whatever you're doing, that's totally fine with me. There's no, like I said, there's no urgency on this at all. Maybe some day there will be, but not on this one.
Are we also talking about or wanting to talk about the less trivial thing I saw recently with regard to the modifying a constraint template such that it may or may not require external data depending on the value of a parameter? Or do you remember this PR? It kind of went stale for a bit, and then Rita pointed out what's the UX here?
Oh, that's the sync data thing.
Yeah.
You confused me with external data.
Oh, sorry. So many data
I know.
happening everywhere.
I linked it at the bottom to the agenda.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah,
Yes,
so
it
we can wait. I just wanted to be sure because I think that one probably will be a spicier discussion. Not really spicier, but more
More meaty.
What's that?
More meaty. But coming back to this PR though, I think I was just curious how we handled like example changes. And because also I don't think we explicitly call out that the examples are not part of the policies that we are sharing with the community. At least I didn't see any verbiage. And I think version, like how we're defining versioning is mostly on the templates, right? But I don't, maybe just maybe I'll just add a PR that just says like, oh, any example or constraint changes are not part of the versioning, just so that we don't forget later. All right.
And if for samples, you want to specifically call out like
constraints, specifically constraints.
Yeah, like I mean, should we just call it in general for samples? Like,
yeah,
samples are like provided as is. Please make sure to
exactly.
change
I think that's the missing piece. It's not in the.
I mean, that's why we call it samples, but yeah, we can explicitly call it out.
I mean, yes, but then when people use it, it doesn't like they expect that you would use it with the constraints, right? So I wouldn't be surprised if people are actually using our example constraints the way it is. So
I mean, when I've worked with customers, I think they mostly go off of the template. Like they look at samples, but almost like they will modify. Almost every time they will modify the constraint.
I think you probably almost have to modify most of them to actually keep your cluster working. I'm sure there's a couple that could be applied, but most of the PSP, if you try and apply that, you'll kill your control plane of your cluster.
Right. Yeah, I've created an issue. I'll work on that.
Cool. I think from my perspective, we covered everything I was hoping for. So I will keep sharing out unless somebody else wants to and just move down the agenda.
Yes, Anlan is next.
Hello. This is quick. I'm thinking about starting work on the Gator support for sync sets soon. So I just wanted to double check that everyone has any thoughts in soon about, or this week, I guess, about the 3 commands that are going to be added. One is going to be a Gator query API resources. One is going to be a Gator generate sync set, and the other is going to be a Gator check sync set, and find more details in the doc. So anyway, just a quick plug. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think I got the gist, but your audio is a bit garbled for me. The 3 commands you said, this is with regard to the doc you had. Is there a link yeah, if you could put a link in the notes just so people can click. But you said 3 commands, right? 1 to generate sync sets, 1 to check sync sets, like that that requirements are satisfied, I should say, given the available sync sets. And what was the third command?
The third command was the one to query the API resources that are supported by the cluster and all the
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
and all the versions for those. Sorry about my audio. I don't know why I'm gonna
It seems to have gotten better. I don't know what you did.
okay. The doc should be clickable, but it's very confusing because it's not blue, but I'll just paste the link.
Oh, I didn't see it in the streaming of the notes here. Is it just like oddly colored?
I have no idea why it's like that, but I'll just repaste it and hopefully it'll format it with the nice blue underline.
My mistake. It is.
It's actually a link. It's just hiding.
We can highlight it. Let's see.
Okay.
I think we have like 3 people trying to change one sentence now.
Load test that conflict resolution.
Eventual consistency, right?
I mean, to be honest, Google Docs does this so much better than Word. We tried to do this with Word and it's like completely out of sync.
So does anyone have any, is everyone familiar with this doc? Does anyone have any questions about it? Anything, any objections to work being started on it? Silence is agreement.
I think I missed this. I think this was shared maybe while I was out.
Yeah. I think it was while you were out. Sorry. I never know like how aggressively to ping people to be like, so, but yeah, I can hold off and just wait for the LGTM.
I apologize. Do you mind giving me a couple of days and just ping you?
For sure. Yes.
Sorry.
No. Totally. My fault for not being more aggressive with it.
For me, it looks good. I just was curious about the implementation ordering.
Yeah. I was kind of planning on just implementing all of the like getting the cube config into the Rust config and all of that like as the first step. But I guess if we want like an MVP out sooner, I could start with like you suggested, just like coming up with the spec first. My only worry is like if we come up with a spec for what the typed in resources will look like, and then like what gets emitted from that Gator query ends up being different, then that's kind of annoying to have to go back and like revise all of it. So I wasn't sure if it would just be easier to just have the query and the output from it settled and implemented first.
I mean, there is some coupling there. Because we're in charge of implementing both, we can kind of de-risk that somewhat. We know the data that we need, right, to satisfy the generation of these sync sets, and we know the wire format of the data that we would query from Kubernetes, right? And so in terms of formatting the input for the stuff that we rely on to do the generation of the sync sets, we can sort of, it should be pretty clear when we are making things harder for ourselves in terms of needing to add more logic to format things appropriately in this query the cluster command, versus when we're making things harder for users who may not want to use that command, right, for whatever reason. So
like basically,
yeah.
be defining as simple as possible on the what gets piped in, and then if that makes it harder for us when in Gator query, that we just deal with it when we write Gator query.
Yeah. But also just being cognizant of you know, what this would do as we're writing it, so we don't make things like unnecessarily hard.
Yeah, that makes sense.
In all honesty, we just need like group versions and kinds, right? And the how we do the deduplication, in my mind, is kind of the only question, right? Like if we do any, and what it looks like.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, like, and also like I think there has been a proposal for this to get implemented in kubectl as well, so that could be another complicating factors. Like if they implement something, presumably we want to be able to just pipe it directly from theirs into ours, so we might have to like update it down the line based on that. But I guess for now that's not really a concern because we haven't seen.
Yeah, well, and a trick for that would be to leave room for some kind of like format key somewhere. I would still mean you couldn't use the output directly, right? You would need to add the format, right? If you wanted it to be a backwards compatible change. But it would be at least a minimal addition. Yeah, I don't know if there's a way we can, like, without knowing what they're going to design for kubectl, and I'm guessing there's no cap we have available to look at here. There's no way to like just design directly to that output.
Yeah, let me double check. I know Alex, you said in the comments. I thought I did see a cap for some reason, but I'm not sure. I'll double check that. But sorry. Yeah, there's no cap. So like there's a PR for it, but I think Julian and Alex think it's not likely to get approved just because it doesn't have an associated cap with it.
Yeah, I would, if you really wanted to look at that, then it would be talking with the talking with the people who maintain kubectl. They would know likelihood. But you know, you could also just add a format flag, right? Or if it's running live in cluster, which I don't know I ever would be, because the whole point is shifting left. But you know,
that's true. Yeah, I can add that. The other, that actually was gonna be my other point, is like, is there any chance of this of CI running on like a pod on the cluster? Because if so, then we can just fetch the kube config. I was just looking at an example, in the kube config like has the option of either being fetched from the cluster or just like looking at the file, the kube config in the environment variables. So I wasn't sure if like, is there a case where Gator gets run on pods on the cluster?
well, I mean, even if it is, like, the point is to have the set of available resources on the destination cluster. Mm-hmm. The assumption would be that there'd be heterogeneous clusters, at least, you know, for some of the time in large enough Kubernetes footprints.
So we should just assume that the destination cluster is the one pointed to by the environment variable, not the cluster that's on this one.
Yeah, well, we should assume there's not one correct answer in terms of like the set of available resources.
Yeah, or so I just mean like where to get the kube config to even begin querying.
That would be, I think that should be left up to the user. Like I like the idea here, and this is part of why I suggested sequential implementation, is like once you start thinking about auth, right, this whole like let's query the cluster thing gets kind of complex, right? And so if we want to deliver something fast, if we can ignore that in the near term, that's cool. But if we just use the same model as kubectl, right, where they have different contexts and the user can choose which, assuming that you know what you're doing is you're pushing two clusters, you know, they've probably already leveraged a similar solution, right? And maybe we add other auths in different ways. Yeah, avoiding this design is part of my goal for the sequential.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Okay.
Sorry if that made no sense to anyone else because they're not up on the doc.
Yeah.
Do we want to? Do you have what you need, or?
Yeah. Thank you so much for.
Yeah.
I've got a couple items to chat about briefly. I think I'm next. Yeah. So we cut RC0 of 313. And with the 2-week soak time on that, we should be ready to cut the final version of 313 on August 8th. So just wanted to run that by folks to make sure that we're okay with that date. It's a Tuesday, but yeah, we should be good to go that date. So I guess if anyone objects to that, throw me a thumbs down or just scream or something. Otherwise, we'll plan to go forward with the release on that date. And then in relation to that, Sertaj and I were talking about updating the documentation to I see your screen, Max. We can hold off if yeah, Sertaj and I were talking about changing the documentation to show the release. Oh yeah, Rita, sorry, it would be 8.8, not 9.8. You're right. Yeah. Well, yeah. Anyway, I'll fix it. With the last like 3 or 4 releases, we've been following a 3-month cadence, but the doc still suggests that we release every 2 months. So I suggest we just give up the ghost on this one and change the docs to say 3 months instead of 2, because that's clearly the cadence that we're able to achieve. So I'm happy to open a PR for that. I just wanted to let folks know that I'm going to be doing that. And then lastly,
just on the 3 months, I just want to make sure that we don't end up with 4 months, because then we're saying 3 months.
I was gonna say that.
Yeah.
I can
Because
totally
we say
see
2
that
months
happen.
and then we do 3 months. So
How about this? How about Xander changes it in the doc, but then we still use the 2 month, but then really it's 3 months.
sounds like a plan.
Okay.
Lastly, internally at Microsoft, we've been going big on GitHub projects for tracking everything, and everyone is actually seeming to really enjoy it. So I'm gonna commandeer the screen share for just a second. So I created this board. It's Gatekeeper Work Board project on the repo.
Hey, Xander.
Yeah.
Real quick, Andrew, would you mind stopping to share your screen?
I think I already paused mine, but I can stop entirely too. There you go.
Can everybody see my screen?
I can see it now. Thank you.
Okay, cool. So I created this board and added the stuff that us Microsoft folk had on our internal board to this one. So if folks wanted to use this, it can provide kind of a granular view of what's in flight at the moment. And we have things broken down into these 2-week iterations, with this current iteration starting today and continuing out into the next meeting 2 weeks from now. I certainly wouldn't want to like force this kind of granular tracking on anyone that doesn't want to do it. I think on the Microsoft side, at least, we will be using this to just kind of track what's happening. But you know, it's on the repo, and everyone else is welcome to, you know, throw things on here that you're working on as well. Sertaj and Rita, did you have any extra thoughts or things to add here? Sounds like no.
Looks like this is private. If everybody is okay with it, would we want to do it public?
I see no harm in having it public, because I mean, the issues themselves are public, so as are the PRs, and that's really the only, like, this is just an aggregation of that data.
Alex says private for now sounds good.
Oh, and by the way, this is also good for reviews. I didn't see the review column. I think that might be a
It's
good
there.
one. Oh, is it there? Okay.
Yeah.
The other thing that's really cool is that you can add the reviewer in the review column, and then the reviewer can just filter out the ones they wanna, they are like on the hook for reviewing it. That makes it easier. Oh yeah, there it is. Yeah, review.
Yeah, this is a drop down. So if you are reviewing PRs, you know, feel free to change the field settings and add your GitHub name onto there. But, you know, it gives us a nice way to filter out, yeah, like Sertaj said, you know, what you're supposed to review, certain, you know, status on things, you know, if we're looking for stuff that's just in review or changes requested. You've got all the linked pull requests here. Yeah. Cat.
Oh,
Well,
and
well,
if there's no
Johnson.
issue, you can also just type something in. It doesn't have to be an issue.
Is the hope that we will use this in this meeting, or?
Yeah, I think so. I had planned to do like milestone check-ins for the meetings. I think we can use this board if folks are okay with it, given that I have the iteration linked set to, you know, time up with the meeting. Yeah, I think that would work well. Yeah. I see a hand up. Alex, what's up?
Hey, sorry, this is giving me a little bit of Jira PTSD. So what do we want to do here? Like, to be able to surface like work items for people, or is that the point?
I think it's at least from, I can speak for my perspective. From my perspective, it's to get an idea of what specific things are in flight, not per se to like track, you know, if folks are like delivering on anything or like if, you know, due dates or anything like that. I think from my perspective, it's a view into like what feature and work, what features and work is currently in flight and how things are flowing through. You know, like I said, we've gotten some value out of it on the Microsoft side, but given that this is a project composed of many people from many different companies, like I certainly wouldn't want to like force a pattern or practice onto anyone. That's all that I had for this week. I will relinquish my screen share.
And Xander, would you be okay? Just like maybe we can share it as part of this meeting. And basically, if you have any agenda items, we can either start with those or this board. What are people's thoughts about that?
I would love to use this board also to move issues to trackable things. I think we did that in the past in this call where we go through issues and mark them as triaged, right? And then we stop doing that. And what ends up happening now is there's a lot of issues that just get automatically closed because of the stale bot. And I don't know if all of us are necessarily like keeping track of them. I know Max does a good job of looking at them, but it would be good to use this board as maybe to move things to iterations.
One thing with like the stale issues though is it is kind of like a mountain of issues, right? So the stale bot kind of acts as a filter to make sure that there's like sufficient interest, right? Like either one of us goes, yeah, that should exist, or the user is like, no, really, I want this, right? So
I just don't think we do that together. We used to, and then we stopped doing that. And to your point, because we haven't done it for so long, these triage meetings are so long, right? But if we were to do it like every week, then it shouldn't be so long.
I think what will happen is we'll see some stuff we'll be like won't fix. Then we'll see some stuff that we say, yeah, that's pretty good, but we don't have time for it. And then we'll forget about it because there's like higher priority stuff. And then we'll have like a backlog of, you know, however many hundreds of issues. And then they'll just be there, right? Or they'll be closed by Stalebot. Like I'm open to doing more collaborative stuff, but I think my larger point is that this is kind of a function of capacity versus volume, rather than, you know, an organizational issue.
Anyone else with opinions about how to triage the issues? Or do we think things are fine as is?
You mean like new issues that are coming in, Rita? Or the old issues that are?
Both, right? Like I think to Max's point, right? Like if one of us already commented on an issue, right? And either we need more information or it's not really something that the project can fix, like naturally they just get kind of closed because nobody's responding, right? So that's one kind. The other kind that I'm seeing is like there are issues that we created, like the maintainers create, and then they just over time they get old and they get closed too. So I don't know. I don't have an answer. I don't have a proposal. I'm just saying that this is what we have today. And I don't know if that's necessarily healthy.
I mean, it would be ideal if everything we thought was like something that should happen happened for sure. But I think if I, for instance, created a year ago an issue, and in a year have not found the time or found anyone else who was like interested enough in that issue to take it up, and there's been like other things coming like Sal or whatever, right, that keep on taking precedence, like that's a pretty strong signal that in an ideal world, yes, this would be done, but will it ever be done? Or will it consistently take second seat to the brighter burning fire?
Yeah, I agree with Max. I mean, it's also kind of indication of like the priorities and the time and just resources in general. I mean, sure, we might have added an issue like a year ago and still close it, but that also kind of signals that it wasn't a priority for a year.
Or maybe these are things we should add to the backlog, meaning like maybe you don't have bandwidth to work on it today, but maybe later, or someone else can work on it, right? I think that's the other thing is, like we have way more stuff than what's on this board right now, right? But like say if someone wants to help, I don't think they know how, like what issues they could actually work on.
Like we should definitely be tagging things with good first issue, right? Like if we want to do like net new issues, like tagging them for sure, that seems good. If the goal is to like not have a backlog by virtue of that we're looking at these issues, I would go back to the this is more a function of lack of effort put into those issues versus the fact that we didn't see those issues, if that makes sense. And not lack of effort generally, just that we've been directing the effort to other things.
And I think putting it on the milestones makes sense, right? Like if you're interested in an issue, put it in a milestone, and then they'll like be more concrete than just opening an issue and letting it be.
Interested or actively working on?
Like if you're like interested in working on like in the next milestone between like 2 to 3 months, right? Then it makes sense to tag it with the milestone. Then that will make you more likely to work on that issue than just creating it. And then still, but we'll close it because it's not a priority at the time, right?
Yeah, like if you're actively working on a thing, or like, I want to be very careful here because we, obviously we plan on working on everything we file an issue for, or at least see value in planning to work on the thing. But like and Xander, let me know if you disagree with the philosophy of the board, but my understanding is that its intent is to track going concerns, right? Meaning things that are like actually staffed.
That's how I initially viewed it. But I think, if we could revisit that if we wanted to make it work for other purposes. That was my initial thought process behind it, though, yes.
Yeah, currently it's more like a shorter term things that you're actively working on, or you agreed that like it is assigned to you, so you are going to work it.
I really like the milestone idea, actually. It kind of reminds me of like how Kubernetes does it, right? Like if you have bandwidth and you want to drive certain thing for a particular milestone, usually the SIG owner would actually add the milestone, right, to the issue, and that's how you track the work. So I think we should start doing that. Otherwise, I think it's sort of like we kind of do it when we remember to do it, and it's not really great.
Yeah, I definitely would be in favor of like looking at this boards for every meeting. Like for me, honestly, there's a bit of a visibility issue, right? Like I see it and I go, oh, that's cool. But then I forget about it because I have other things. And so without that reminder, right, I haven't developed the habit of, oh, this should be up to date, right? And so it just.
I'm going to add it to the links below the information section on the meeting doc. So it's right there with the like meeting link, repository recordings, all that stuff.
I think it's also good for the design docs, like so say like I'm gonna put Anna's design doc on the spot. So like if it's like there was an issue, I don't know if there was an issue for this one, but it may not be visible because there's just so much stuff coming in, right? And it gets buried. So if you didn't see it at the time, you may not be aware of it. With the board, because it's like shorter, that it is like that's sort of in there, and then you can also add people as reviewers.
Yeah, and it's persistent.
Yeah.
Like for me, I'm just kind of like careful about how I handle my email and what gets marked as read, which is like not ideal, but so far, more or less, I feel like I haven't missed too much on the GitHub review side.
I think this is gonna help me too, like especially if like somebody's blocked on review or something. That like, because often I will be like, which PR is blocked on review. It's kind of hard to know sometimes. I don't know which status would that be? Would that be in review or blocked?
Status on the board?
No, yeah, on the board.
Got in review and blocked on there.
There's a person for the review column. Is there possible, like, is there an attention set kind of thing? Like, oh, these 3 people need to take action.
I think the best way to do that is with a new, like a custom view. You can like set, so each person could like create a view on the board. So like Rita could create a view with filters that show just the items that are like either ready or in review with her tagged as the reviewer. I think there's a lot you can do with like, you know, just adding additional views and then setting specific filters on those.
Okay. As a first step though, like maybe after the release, like maybe next week when we have this meeting or the following week, can we do a milestone planning? Like just start adding milestones to all the issues and that we want to accomplish for the following milestone. Okay, great. Let's add it to the agenda. Also really quick, Did we make a decision on the release cadence? Maybe I missed it. Did we say 2 months or 3 months?
3 months, but everyone's going to pretend that it's still 2 months so that we deliver it in 3 months.
Okay. I mean, that was a joke, but like, I didn't actually hear
I
everyone.
mean, I think that there's
I didn't hear
very
everyone
much
agree to
based
the
on
3
reality.
months though.
We're gonna set our clocks fast.
Or maybe we make a GitHub action that cuts the release. You can cancel it.
Sort of like a doomsday release.
Yeah.
Oh,
This is it.
we could have code freeze, like 2 month code freeze.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I guess like the RC to the release is kind of the code freeze, like the 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Okay, so I didn't hear objections to the 3 months. That sounds like we're good then. Okay.
But I do hear the worry. Okay, will this mean 4 months?
Yeah.
We'll try.
If we don't go 4 months, then we'll go back on 2 months. So it's ended in 3 months. So if 3/14 ends in 4 months, then we'll change it to 2.
I think what this means is, I think around the 2 month mark, that's when we start to look at RC. Like, we shouldn't wait for 2 weeks before to do
Yeah.
to talk about RC, because usually that's too late.
Yeah, and some of this might be like human initiated, right? Like, is it 3 months because it's hard and we don't have the time, or is it 3 months because we like look at the calendar and go, oh,
Yeah, that's
It's
yeah.
both.
I think it's like I realized the last one, I was like, oh, we're supposed to ship by end of month, and then there was at the time 2 weeks left, and then we always add issues to it last minute because it's like a shuffle, right? I want to get this in, I want to get this in, and then that's how it becomes like an extra month.
Yeah.
We need the doomsday action. That's it. That's the only solution.
Okay, I'm gonna capture this real quick because I'm not gonna remember. So Xander, you'll update the docs for the 3 months to 3 months?
Yeah, I'll get a PR going for that.
Cool, thank you. There's a lot of places where we are saying 2 months, like hard coded to 2 months. So you're gonna have to look for them. All right. I don't think we have time for the rest, unfortunately.
yeah. Look at
Oh, somebody was asking if there's a demo of Kubernetes native policies in Slack. I don't think we do, right? That would be cool if you could demo it somewhere.
there is a demo set of resources and instructions for how to set things up so the demo will run.
Do we have anything recorded for that, or just like
nothing recorded? Not
okay.
just like the Agile Bank stuff. The users can run it. And there's no shell script that will like auto run it either. And obviously these are like prototype level resources.
Right. It might be cool. I'll take a look at it, see if I can record a demo. And I think it would be good to like send it around, get more feedback and stuff.
Do look at the template doc, the cell template doc. While we're on that, that's all I kind of want to say there. If you have comments, comment. We can do more next week.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.